Valyrian steel is a legendary metal originating from ancient and old Valyria, renowned across the world for its unparalleled quality and craftsmanship. Infused with magic during its forging, this rare steel possesses unique properties that set it apart, making weapons forged from it exceptionally strong, sharp and resilient. Given this, Valyrian steel plays a huge role in the wider lore and main story of A Song of Ice and Fire to different degrees. The remarkable properties of Valyrian steel stem from a combination of its meticulous craftsmanship and arcane sorcery. The metal is repeatedly folded to purify and balance the iron, while unknown spells imbue it with unnatural strength. It is widely believed that blood magic or fire magic plays some kind of role in its creation, as all Valyrian sorcery is rooted in blood or flame. Valyrian steel blades are matched in quality, lighter, stronger, harder, and sharper than even the finest castle-forged steel, even hundreds of years after the doom of Valyria. Renowned for their enduring sharpness, these weapons remain as keen as the day they were forged after centuries. Each blade bears distinctive rippled patterns, reminiscent of real-world Damascus steel, crafted by folding the metal thousands of times. Most Valyrian steel has a dark grey, nearly black hue, and is so resilient that not even common fire or dragon flame can harm it, with the exception of maybe the decorative elements such as pommels. After the doom of Valyria, the knowledge of how to manufacture Valyrian steel was lost, making the blades that exist today extremely rare and valuable prizes from all over the world, from Westeros to Asshai by the Shadow. Only 227 blades are recorded in Westeros, and even that number includes many now lost or vanished from history, and out of that 227, we only know of a handful of them with any lore to detail. In Westeros, these weapons are prized heirlooms of noble houses, each bearing unique names and a rich legacy. Even the more impoverished, lesser houses fiercely guard their blades, unwilling to part with such rare and storied treasures. In this video, we will be taking a look at the lore of all the Valyrian steel blades we know of in Westeros, and even some that have gone missing from the story as well. Heartsbane must go to a man strong enough to wield her, and you are not worthy to touch her hilt. Lord Randyll Tarly to his son Samwell, A Game of Thrones chapter 26, Jon 4. Heartsbane is a two-handed Valyrian steel greatsword of House Tarly of Horn Hill in the Reach, and is currently in the possession of the house's Lord Randyll Tarly. House Tarly have had possession of the blade for at least the last 500 years, and as you would expect, it has been passed down as an heirloom from one Lord of Horn Hill to the next. Like with a lot of these blades made of Valyrian steel, it has a long and storied history. Lord Sam Tarly, known as Savage Sam, is said to have cut down a dozen Dornishmen with Heartsbane during the Vulture Hunt in 37 AC, towards the end of the Second Dornish War. During the timeline of the main books, Lord Randyll Tarly let his son and then heir, Samwell, hold Heartsbane a handful of times, but the boy was afraid he would hurt his sisters. Randyll eventually disowned his son, forcing Sam to take the black, deeming him not worthy of such a prize blade. During the War of Five Kings, Lord Randyll takes Heartsbane to war with him, while with Renly Baratheon's army. Even after Renly's death, and the Tyrell side with House Lannister, Randyll still carries Heartsbane with him as he's tasked to bring order to Maidenpool. My lady has a thirst. Whenever she comes out to dance, she likes a drop of red. Lyn Corbray, during the Lords Declarant meeting at the Eyrie, A Feast for Crows chapter 23, Elaine 1. Lady Forlorn is the ancestral longsword of House Corbray and is one of the Valyrian blades we know most about. Lady Forlorn is traditionally passed down from Lord of Heartsholme to his successor, but there have been instances where the Lord lends the blade to a son or a brother for their lifetime, in cases where a Lord is no warrior, with Lady Forlorn returned to the Lord afterwards. Lady Forlorn has a heart-shaped ruby in its pommel. The Valyrian steel of its blade is a smoke grey in appearance. The name Lady Forlorn is believed to date back to the Andal invasion thousands of years ago, and predates the current Valyrian steel blade itself. The original Lady Forlorn, which was made of normal castle-forged steel, was claimed by Robar II Royce, High King of the First Men of the Vale, after he slew Kyle Corbray, King of the Fingers and an Andal leader. Robar then wielded this sword during the Battle of the Seven Stars, using it to kill Torgal Tollet and a decoy posing as Sir Artis Aram. According to Corbray tradition, Sir Jaime Corbray killed Robar in that same battle, allowing House Corbray to reclaim the original Lady Forlorn. At some unknown point in time, House Corbray came into the possession of a Valyrian steel sword, which they named Lady Forlorn in honour of their ancestral weapon. The fate of the original blade is not known. A Lord Carl Corbray wielded this blade during the battle beneath the God's Eye in 43 AC, as King Maegor the Cruel did battle with Aegon the Uncrowned. Lord Carl is believed to have slain Sir Davos Darklyn of the Kingsguard. In 50 AC, Carl famously threatened Lord Rhaegar Baratheon with Lady Forlorn when Rhaegar proposed replacing King Jaehaerys Targaryen with Princess Aeria Targaryen after Rhaegar had lost the favour of the king. During the Dance of the Dragons, the Targaryen Civil War of Succession between 129 and 131 AC, Lady Forlorn was carried by Sir Corwyn Corbray, brother to Lord Leowyn Corbray, a regent for King Aegon III. Corwyn was killed by a crossbowman at Runestone in 134 AC, shortly after drawing the sword on Lord Gunther Royce. In 196 AC, during the Battle of the Red Grass Field at the end of the First Blackfyre Rebellion, Lady Forlorn was wielded by Sir Gawain Corbray of the Kingsguard. He fought a legendary duel against Daemon Blackfyre himself, who bore the sword Blackfyre, the Sword of Kings. Their battle is said to lasted nearly an hour before Daemon emerged victorious, writing Gawain and Lady Forlorn into true legendary status. More recently, Lady Forlorn has played a role in the Battle of the Trident in 283 AC, during Robert's Rebellion. When Lord Corbray was wounded, his younger son, Sir Lyn Corbray, seized the sword, slew his father's attacker, and led a mad charge against the Dornishmen who were fighting for House Targaryen, killing Prince Lewin Martell of the Kingsguard in the process. For this valour, Lyn was granted Lady Forlorn upon his father's death, passing over his elder brother Lionel. The blade is still in possession of Lyn to this day. Longclaw is an apt name. Wolves have claws as much as bears. Jon Snow to Jorah Mormont, A Game of Thrones Chapter 60. Jon 9. Longclaw was the ancestral Valyrian steel bastard sword of House Mormont. The Mormonts carried Longclaw for at least 500 years, but we are not sure how or when Longclaw came into their possession. We know little of its older history, but know a fair deal about its more recent. Lord Jorah Mormont, the former Lord of Bear Island, gave the blade to his son, Jorah Mormont, when Jorah joined the Night's Watch to make way for his son as Lord. But Jorah later brought dishonour to the house by selling poachers to slavers. However, he had the grace to leave the sword behind before he fled Bear Island and Westeros altogether. His aunt, the now Lady Mage Mormont, returned the sword to her brother Gior, by then the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who put it aside at Castle Black, since the sight of it reminded him of his son's shame. By right, Lady Mage could have kept the blade, being the ruler of Bear Island. We are not sure why she chose to give the blade back to her brother. During the events of the main book series, while saving the life of Jorah Mormont from a white attack at Castle Black, Jon Snow sets a fire in the Lord Commander's tower that damages Longclaw's hilt, melting the silver on the bear's head pommel and burning the crossguard grip. After finding the blade in the ashes of his bedchamber, Gior has his brothers of the Night's Watch repair the sword. The Lord Commander brings the sword to Donal Noy in his forge. Helder helps Spotted Pate of Maidenpool carve a stone for the pommel, which becomes a snarling wolf's head to reflect Jon Snow's heritage. Samuel Tarly purchases garnets in Molestown so chips can be used for the wolf's eyes. The pommel is also weighted with lead to give it a better balance. The sword has a soft leather grip, replacing the old burned one. Gior gives the blade to Jon, who notes that the appropriateness of a bastard wielding a bastard sword. The blade is in possession of Jon for the rest of the main books. Longclaw is a bastard sword, or what's called a hand and a half sword, which means it's a good half foot longer than a standard longsword, tapered to thrust as well as slash, with 3 fullers incised into the blade to reduce its weight. Red Rain is the Valyrian steel sword belonging to House Drum, the Lords of Old Wick in the Iron Islands. There is very little lore about Red Rain, but we do know that the sword came into the possession of House Drum when Himar Drum took the blade from an armoured knight with nothing but his wits and a wooden cudgel. We don't know when this occurred, but it seems like it was at least a few centuries ago. There are 2 fan theories about this blade. One, that the colour of the blade being red gives its name to the sword, with the rain part coming from the idea of dripping blood from a wound. The other more popular fan theory is the knight killed by Himardrum was a member of House Rain, whose coat of arms depict a red lion, hence the name Red Rain. Nightfall is a Valyrian steel longsword which belonged to House Harlaw, and again we know very little about its backstory, with huge gaps left to fill, and leaving many questions. The storied sword is currently wielded by Sir Harris Harlaw in the main books. The first we hear of the blade is that Lord Dalton Greyjoy took Nightfall from a dead corsair. Given Dalton was active during the Dance of the Dragons between 129 and 131 AC, it is likely he came into possession of the blade during this time. We do not know how it came to be in the possession of House Harlaw. The blade was Valyrian steel, spell-forged, and dark as smoke. Nothing held an edge like Valyrian steel. The thoughts of Bran Stark on Ice. A Game of Thrones Chapter 1. Bran 1. Ice was the ancestral greatsword of House Stark of Winterfell. Ice is as wide as a man's hand and 6 feet long. The blade is said to be taller than Robb Stark and near as tall as Sir Ilyn Payne. If it were made of more conventional steel, it would likely be very difficult to wield due to its weight. Its Valyrian steel is dark and smoky with deep rippling. We think the name Ice is a legacy from the Age of Heroes and predates the current sword and was used multiple times for multiple different ancestral swords of House Stark over their long and storied history. About 150 years before Aegon's conquest, the Valyrian steel greatsword was spell-forged in Valyria and then acquired by House Stark by unknown means, who named it after their legacy of other famed ancestral swords named Ice. What happened to the old swords is not clear, but there is some speculation they are kept with the dead kings of the north in the crypts beneath Winterfell. We know in 50 AC, a Lord Walton Stark used ice to execute Sir Oliver Bracken, who had rebelled against the Night's Watch. Lord Cregan Stark then used ice to behead Sir Giles Belgrave and Lord Larys Strong in King's Landing during the Hour of the Wolf, in the wake of the Dance of the Dragons. Lord Eddard Stark preferred not to use the blade in combat, but did often use ice whenever he condemned a man to death. Ned would take ice with him to King's Landing when he became Hand of the King, but with his arrest after the death of King Robert Baratheon, the blade was given to the King's Justice, Sir Ilyn Payne, who then used ice to execute Eddard. Ilyn would then wield the blade for the next few weeks, before it was taken by Tywin Lannister, who believed the blade was too fine to be used by a headsman. After Tywin Lannister takes ice from Ilyn, he has Tobo Mott reforge the greatsword into 2 Valyrian steel longswords. When Tyrion sees Sir Ilyn with his new silver greatsword, he regrets not having sent ice back to Robb Stark, who was killed in the Red Wedding. King Joffrey receives one of the 2 new longswords from his grandfather, Tywin, as a wedding gift, and names it Widow's Wail. Tywin gives the other new blade to his eldest son, Sir Jaime Lannister, but Jaime rejects the gift. He instead gifts the sword to Brienne of Tarth, sending her to find the missing Sansa Stark, asking her to call the sword Oathkeeper. When the Valyrian steel was reworked to form the new 2 blades, red was worked into the metal. Thus Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail have red and black ripples throughout its steel. Because Daemon was the better man, the old king saw it too. He gave the sword to Daemon Blackfyre, the sword of Aegon the Conqueror, the blade that every Targaryen king has wielded since the conquest. He put the sword in Daemon's hand the day he knighted him, a boy of 12. My father says it was because Daemon was a swordsman, and Daeron never was. Why give a horse to a man who cannot ride? The sword was not the kingdom, he says. Your father is a fool. Eustace Osgrey, an egg, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the sworn sword. Blackfyre is the fabled sword of kings of House Targaryen, a hand and a half, or bastard longsword, made of Valyrian steel, once wielded by Aegon the Conqueror and likely many Targaryen lords of Dragonstone before him. The blade was said to have a ruby pommel hilt with a dragon crossguard, with a standard dark silver Valyrian steel look. The colour of the blade is significantly darkened after it was placed on Aegon the Conqueror's funeral pyre. Other than the darker colour, the blade itself was unharmed. It has been wielded by every Targaryen king until the reign of King Aegon IV, when he gave the sword to his bastard son, Daemon Waters. Daemon took the name Blackfyre after the sword, when he became legitimised on his father's death. Many would see Aegon IV giving the Sword of Kings to Daemon as a sign of him recognising Daemon as his heir and is one of the many arguments made by those who supported House Blackfyre during the Blackfyre rebellions. The same argument was made during the Dance of the Dragons, when the possession of Blackfyre was used to make a case for Aegon II's claim to the Iron Throne. The blade was then wielded by Daemon during the first Blackfyre rebellion, and later briefly by Aemon Blackfyre, one of Daemon's sons, after his father was killed at the Battle of the Red Grass Field, but Aemon was also quickly killed in the battle. Daemon's half-brother Aegon Rivers, known as Bitterstill, attempted to rally the rebels with Blackfyre in hand, but Bitterstill withdrew after dueling another half-brother, Brynden Rivers, his own personal rival, Bloodraven. With Daemon and his twin sons dead at the Red Grass Field, Bitterstill took Blackfyre with him into exile in the Free Cities, where he eventually founded the sellsword company, the Golden Company. Aegon refused to give the Valyrian steel sword to Daemon II Blackfyre for the ill-fated Second Blackfyre Rebellion, and Lord Ambrose Butterwell doubted Daemon's potential after learning he lacked Blackfyre. Possession of Blackfyre after Bitterstill is unknown, although Maesters consider the Blackfyre pretenders to have ended with the death of Maelys Blackfyre. A common fan theory is that Blackfyre is still in the possession of the Golden Company and may make an appearance in the Winds of Winter. Darksister was made for nobler tasks than slaughtering sheep. She has a thirst for blood. Daemon Targaryen to Corlys Velaryon, fire and blood, heirs of the dragon, a question of succession. Darksister is a famous Valyrian steel longsword and is the second ancestral sword of House Targaryen, the other being Blackfyre. Darksister has been in the possession of House Targaryen since before Aegon's conquest. It's speculated it may have actually been forged for a female warrior originally, as its slender blade is designed for a woman's hand. It was wielded by Queen Visenya Targaryen during Aegon's conquest, whom was notably a very skilled warrior. The blade would often be wielded by talented or skilled warriors of House Targaryen ever since. In 25 AC, Visenya would give the blade to her and Aegon's son, Maegor, who would then wield the blade until he was gifted Blackfyre by his brother, King Aenys I. The blade would then be wielded by a young King Jaehaerys Targaryen before he became king, very briefly. It was seen at his hip when he flew to King's Landing to claim the Iron Throne. After becoming king, he would wield Blackfyre. Prince Baelon Targaryen, one of Jaehaerys' sons, wielded Darksister in 92 AC, when avenging the death of his brother Prince Aemon, who had been slain by Myrish pirates who had invaded and occupied Tarth. Baelon the Brave slew countless Myrishmen with the blade. Prince Daemon Targaryen was given Darksister by King Jaehaerys I for his prowess, and is perhaps his most well-known wielder, apart from Visenya Targaryen. Daemon wielded Darksister during his wars for the Stepstones, using it to behead Kragas Drahar in 108 AC. In 115 AC, he defeated the Braavosi betrothed of Laena Velaryon with the blade in a duel. During the Dance of the Dragons, Daemon would use the blade in the battle above the God's Eye, with the sword being lost for a period in the lake as a result. Prince Aemon Targaryen, the Dragon Knight, was deemed worthy of Darksister, as he was considered the greatest jouster and swordsman of his era. Darksister was eventually bestowed upon Brynden Rivers, also known as Bloodraven, though his preferred weapon was a weirwood longbow. In 205 AC, a young Sir Duncan the Tall saw Lord Bloodraven wearing Darksister on his hip while riding the Street of Steel with his raven's teeth. According to some sources, Brynden took Darksister with him when he went to the Wall to join the Night's Watch, where he rose to become Lord Commander of the Watch in 239 AC, but then disappeared beyond the Wall in 252 AC. The sword's current whereabouts is unknown, but it may still be in the possession of Bloodraven. The dagger had been Valyrian steel, and Valyrian steel bites deep and sharp. The thoughts of Catelyn Stark on the Catspaw Dagger, A Clash of Kings Chapter 22, Catelyn 2. Littlefinger's blade is a weapon used by Catspaw during the assassination attempt on Bran Stark as seen in Game of Thrones. The unnamed knife once belonged to Lord Peter Baelish, whose nickname is Littlefinger, hence the name Littlefinger's blade. But fans have come to call the dagger the Catspaw Dagger. Although the dagger is plain, it is finely made of Valyrian steel and has a smooth black dragonbone hilt. Its edge is extremely sharp. It's unknown where Peter Baelish originally acquired the dagger, or if it has any significance before he owned it. During the tourney on Prince Joffrey's name day in 298 AC, Sir Jaime Lannister faced Sir Loras Tyrell in the lists as a final match. Lord Baelish bet on Jaime Lannister to win the joust, wagering his dagger, but lost it to King Robert Baratheon, who had bet on Loras. Tyrion Lannister also bet on the match, The Catspaw Dagger in the HBO show has much more detailed backstory, originally belonging to Aegon the Conqueror after being brought by Aenar the Exile from Valyria just prior to the Doom, and when the blade is heated by fire, displays Valyrian glyphs that read, "From my blood will come the prince that was promised, and his will be the song of ice and fire." It is passed down from king to king with knowledge of Aegon's prophecy and the coming long night. Furthermore, in Game of Thrones, the dagger was used to kill the leader of the White Walkers, and thus destroy them all. While it may be possible the dagger could still be Aegon's in the books, we have no proof one way or the other. The likelihood of it having anything to do with anything like Aegon's prophecy, or the killing of a leadership figure for the White Walkers, does seem unlikely. Brightroar was the ancient Valyrian steel greatsword that once belonged to House Lannister. It had a fine leather grip with a lion's head pommel. Brightroar seemed to have come into possession of the kings of Casterly Rock in the centuries prior to the doom of Valyria, and it is said the weight of gold they paid for it would have been enough to raise an army several times over. But House Lannister was so rich, the gold was of no consequence to them, and King Lancel IV Lannister is said to have beheaded an Ironborn king, Harland half-drowned, with a Brightroar, and then later wielding it against Sir Wilbert Osgrey in a war against the kings of the Reach. But much like House Stark and Ice, this seems to be another sword with the same name, since Lancel IV Lannister's contemporary, King Giles III Gardner, lived at least 1,000 years before the conquest. Brightroar was lost little more than 100 years after it was acquired by House Lannister, when King Tommen II carried it with him when he sailed with his great fleet to the ruins of Old Valyria, with the intention of plundering it for its wealth and sorcery he still was sure remained there. The fleet never returned, nor Tommen nor Brightroar. House Lannister has been searching for a replacement ever since. Lord Tywin Lannister attempted to buy replacements from lesser, poorer houses, but was always rebuffed. In the end, after House Stark lost their Valyrian steel greatsword, Ice, at the start of the War of the Five Kings, with the arrest of Eddard Stark, Tywin would have Ice reforged into two new Valyrian steel longswords for the house, Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper. Prior to this, however, one of Tywin's younger brothers, Gerion Lannister, went in search of the sword, believing to have travelled to Valyria in 291 AC, but he never returned. Orphan Maker is a Valyrian steel longsword that belonged to House Roxton of Ring. The blade has a very distinctive black hue to it. Sir John Roxton wielded the blade during the Targaryen civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons, while fighting on behalf of King Aegon II and the Greens. During the Battle of the Honeywine in 130 AC, he used it to deliver a fatal wound to Lord Owen Costane. Later that year, Jon used Orphan Maker to split in two Lord Footley in the aftermath of the First Battle of Tumbleton, and Hugh Hammer during the Second Battle. Jon was immediately killed by Hugh's men in retribution, however. The sword then came into the possession of another Green commander, Lord Unwin Peake. When he became Hand of the King during the regency of King Aegon III in 133 AC, he drew Orphan Maker, declaring that unlike the previous Hand, he could still wield the sword. The sword's current whereabouts is unknown. It may have been returned to House Roxton, but may still be in the possession of House Peake. Lamentation was the famed Valyrian steel sword of House Royce of Runestone. Sir Willem Royce wielded the blade during the Dance of the Dragons. He was one of the 7 who rode to the rescue of Prince Joffrey Velaryon during the riots of King's Landing, but was killed when a man leapt down from a rooftop to land on his back. Lamentation was torn from Willem's hand and carried off, never to be found again. However, there are some rumours that claim Sir Warwick Wheaton slashed the wing of Syrax with a Valyrian steel sword, likely Lamentation, during the storming of the Dragon Pit. Vigilance is a Valyrian steel longsword that belongs to House Hightower and likely wielded by the Lord of the Hightower. We do know that at least Ormond Hightower, Lord of the Hightower, wielded the blade during the Dance of the Dragons, in which he fought for King Aegon II Targaryen. After the battle on the Honeywine, he used it to knight Prince Daeron Targaryen, his squire and the king's brother, dubbing him Sir Daeron the Daring, for turning the battle in their favour with Daeron's dragon Tessarion. Lord Ormond was killed by Roderick Dustin, Lord of Barrowton, during the First Battle of Tumbleton. It's unknown what happened to Vigilance afterwards, but it was likely retrieved by another member of House Hightower present at the battle. There is 3 more very minor weapons we know existed in Westeros at some point, but have little to no lore about. Truth was a Valyrian steel longsword carried by Moredo Rogaire, a Lyseni noble from the wealthy banking Roger family who would have been active in King's Landing during the Lysene Spring, during the reign of King Aegon III. We also know that daggers of Valyrian steel were given out by Euron Greyjoy to the Ironborn captains during the Kingsmoot on Old Wick as seen in A Feast for Crows. He very likely found these in Valyria. Finally, we know of a Valyrian steel axe, reportedly possessed by House Celtigar. The axe may have been in the family for a long time, given the Celtigars have Valyrian descent.